Salutations, respected viewers. This is George from Ireland. I'm on Gerrard Street in London. Behind me is where the club was founded by Dr. Samuel Johnson, simply known as the Club, a coffee house for intellectuals to while away the time in productive conversation. I can't say it was idle. So Dr. Johnson, he came from Lichfield in the English Midlands, where his father was a bookseller. So he grew up in a bibliomane household. And he later went to Oxford University, where he spent only 1 year, saying it was perhaps the least productive year of his life. And then he came down to London. He left without a degree, and he really became a man of letters, running his own bookshop, but was best known as a conversationalist, as a wit, as a controversialist. And he appears to have had something like Asperger's syndrome. Well, obviously there was no sound recording of film in those days, so I would have to do a bit of a Dr. Johnson impersonation. There's a bit of Dr. Johnson about me. Well, how can I do? I'm saying, he was Dr. Samuel Johnson, who came from Lichfield, and he had many thousands of books in his bookshop. All the day he passed his time, not in idle conversation, but chatting away in a most useful manner, in which to elucidate people of various political notions. Things like that. He's famous for running one of the first dictionaries. One of the first. For example, he said about oats, that a food that in England is fed to horses, but in Scotland supports the people. And it's over by Covent Garden he first met James Boswell, a Scotsman. Up until this time that Dr. Johnson had been possessed of a most virulent Caledonophobic prejudice. And he did tour Great Britain, and he wrote an account of it, a tour of the whole island of Great Britain. And Boswell was his tyro. Writing down all the witticisms so that Johnson came up. So he'd speak non-stop for hours with his overly precise diction and almost in a monotone, speaking with a sort of machine gun patter. Joshua Reynolds, Sir Joshua Reynolds, was a renowned painter, first president of the Royal Academy of Arts, which lies not a half a mile from here. So despite one of them having words as his medium, the other had images, they were very good friends. But Reynolds came from a rather more she background, patrician background than Samuel Johnson. He's called Dr. Johnson because he was given an honorary doctorate of letters by Oxford University. He was not a medical man, nor did he have any degree. I mean, virtually nobody did have a degree. It was not considered embarrassing to go down from university in those days without a degree. People would go for a year or two, sometimes leave without a degree. There was no shame in that. Whereas these days that would be perceived as being a failure. So he never married, is really devoted to his books, and he's the one who said that London has all the pleasures that life can afford. When a man is tired of London, he is tired of life, and on and on. So he had the heartiest contempt for the American Revolution, saying, why is it we hear the loudest yelps for liberty from the drivers of Negroes, saying that many of these founding fathers of the United States owned other people, and they can't possibly value freedom when they're so viciously oppressive to African Americans. Now, in fairness, there are many British politicians here, whether they're for or against the American Revolution, also owned other humans. So perhaps it was hypocritical in him calling them hypocritical. Dr. Johnson himself didn't own people. So he was much more associated with the Tory party and professed disdain for the Whig party. So that was that. You should read James Boswell's life of Dr. Johnson. You can also go to the site of a house he used to live in near Fleet Street, near the city. But it's not the original building, unfortunately, but they've recreated his life quite effectively. It's a very vivid and intriguing museum. That's Dr. Samuel Johnson.